Have to record now.
Okay, yes, it allows me to do
Awesome.
that. Okay. Okay. All right, as I was going to say, I sent everybody some information about a program on Hebrew. I do the best I can on a normal circumstance, and I just have so much time to do the Hebrew. This is a program being run by the synagogue, where if we ever get back to actually being there in presence, we'll meet. And it's slightly different the way I'm going to do it. But I think it's worthwhile if you have the opportunity. It's on Sunday mornings, and maybe you might find it helpful. The program that is on Sunday uses what they call the NJOP, or National Jewish Outreach Program. And the Hebrew approach is a little bit different from the one I'm going to use, which actually the textbook is from the Reform movement, but it's a very good one. I will have to send you copies if I can't get the entire book sent to you, but I'll send copies to everybody when the opportunity arises. All right. The second thing is normally what I'm going to do from now on is to start the class a review of the weekday Torah portion. I think it's important. We try to go through a good part of the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, during the course of the few weeks that we have on that section. But we obviously don't have enough time to go through everything in great detail. And some of them I will do in more detail. The Megillot, when it's around the holidays that they are referring to. But the book of book of Genesis, since it's at the beginning of our year and we're in class together, I go over the weekly Torah portion. First and foremost, we suggest that you get a translation of the entire Tanakh, the entire Jewish Bible. And on the list, we say the new JPS version of it is called the Tanakh, because it is a good modern translation. It is based upon the Jewish text. It's not deeply, there's not really much commentary in the standard form of it. There are various editions of it that have commentaries. And it does have some modern critical apparatuses involved with it. Another very popular one out there is the Art Scroll series. And they have all kinds of different editions with commentaries of different authorities. It's not modern at all in terms of the approach. Nothing wrong with it in terms of that, but just be aware up front that they're very traditional in their interpretations and usually following Rashi's commentary. The Tanakh is put out by JPS, and that is the reference work that we like you to have. But there are many, many sources. Online, there is a site called Sefaria, Sefaria. I don't remember if I mentioned that to you before. Sefaria.com, and they have many texts with some translations of them that are available for free. They hit you up for a donation if you want to give to them, but that's available as well and covers many different aspects of Jewish knowledge. Okay, so we're going to start with Bereishit, the opening chapter, opening book of the entire corpus of the Tanakh. Now, I'm calling it Tanakh for a very specific reason. And that is, it is the Jewish traditional way of referring to it. It is actually made up of an abbreviation. The T sound, the Ta, is for the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. The N in the middle is for Nevi'im, which is the Hebrew for prophets. And the Ch at the end is Ketuvim, the writings, the 3rd section of the Bible, as Jewish tradition sees it. It is not the Old Testament. The reason why I say that is you have to understand why it was even called the Old Testament. In Christian circles, the theology is that there was an old covenant. The old covenant was that between God and the Jewish people in the flesh, Israel. With the coming of Jesus, there's a new covenant, the covenant of the Spirit through Jesus. And in the English of Shakespearean times, which the King James Bible comes from, the word testament also can have the meaning of covenant. So the Old Testament could be translated as the Old Covenant. And the New Testament can be translated as the New Covenant, with a very clear indication that that means one is old, no good anymore, and one is new, hence good. So in Jewish circles, we prefer to refer to either the Tanakh using the Hebrew designation, or the Hebrew scriptures, or the Hebrew Bible. All of those are possibilities for descriptive terminology for what we're going to be looking at. Now, you should also understand, and I'll go over it again when we talk about the Bible in general, the Tanakh, the names of the books that we know in English derive ultimately from the Septuagint, the Greek translation, through the Vulgate, the Latin translation of the Bible. And as is the case in many modern works, the title of the book is meant to be explanatory. For example, the first book of the Bible is Genesis. Genesis means creation, beginnings. Second is Exodus, going out of Egypt, from Latin, exodos, leading out. Leviticus, Levitical properties, the properties of the priests. Numbers in English and numero in Latin, because it begins with a census. And Deuteronomia, or Deuteronomy, the repetition of the law, because Deuteronomy does indeed seem to have, as it were, a lot of repetitions or phrasing of some of the laws of the Torah. Okay. However, in Jewish tradition, books are usually titled by an opening word of the book. One of the first significant words of the book gives it its Hebrew name. So the beginning of the Tanakh is Bereishit. Begins Bereishit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz, when God began to create heaven and earth. The first word of the Torah, the first word of the Bible, is thus Bereishit. At the beginning, or in the beginning, there's a whole literature on how you really translate that one word. So that in itself is an interesting phenomenon. The very first word of the first chapter of the Bible is subject to debate on how we understand it. Okay? And so then each weekly Torah portion is titled by that week's section that we're going to read, again, usually using one of the opening significant words of the passage. So not only is the whole book called Bereishit, but it's also the opening Torah portion that we will read this coming Shabbat. We also read the opening of it on Simchat Torah. And Bereishit, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it because it's very significant and very challenging at the same time. You know, the opening of the Torah, the opening of the Tanakh, the Bible, doesn't say that there was this sudden explosion back several billion years ago that was called the Big Bang, and from it all kinds of electrical impulses, matter begins to come out of it and form and spreads throughout the universe, creating galaxies, and the galaxies creating clouds, rather. They become galaxies, the galaxies become suns. Some of the suns or stars form planets, and some of those planets, one of them being the third planet from the sun, what we call the sun, became the planet Earth, in which life arose on. Right? It's not a science textbook. That is the current popular Big Bang theory of the creation of the universe. And I personally have no reason for disagreeing with that basic premise. But the Torah begins with a more, I'm going to call not as denigratory, but mythological. Mythological means it tells the story in a way to bring information, understanding to the people hearing it. It doesn't mean it isn't true in an absolute sense. The opening words, Bereishit bara Elokim, in the beginning, or God began to create heaven and earth, is true. God created the universe. That's the most important element to be taken from that opening line. That whether you see the creation of the universe through the Big Bang, or you see it as a result of a 7-day creation myth, or you see it in some other way, the important element is that where Judaism traditionally anyway starts is with a creator. And you may go in different directions on your theology and how you deal with what the creator is. And I'm sure all the rabbis that are sponsoring the different ones of you have perhaps different ways of viewing what it means by the term in English, God, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, praise be He. But I think basic to understanding Torah, understanding Judaism, is that God is the creator. As the creator, that means He is also the source for right and wrong, good and evil. That may be challenging, and there are times that we might challenge that, what that means. And we have to struggle with that, especially when we deal with things like the Holocaust, or the suffering of a poor child, or the coronavirus that we're going through right now. But it does mean that there is one God who created the universe. So now getting back to that first verse, which I could spend all night on, but we're not going to. Bereishit means at the beginning of something. And so in the beginning should follow with the beginning of something, in the beginning of creating. But it doesn't actually say that. It says at the beginning or in the beginning of, which seems to be the way you want to translate it. Bara, He created, Elohim, God, et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz, heaven and earth. Or according to Ibn Ezra, heaven and then the earth, or heaven with the earth. According to the Ramban Nachmanides, that heaven and earth is, he apparently misunderstands a certain Greek philosophical concept, but he says it's the original matter from which everything was derived. But God created it. Most of the Greek philosophers that follow in this line don't believe that the matter was created, that the matter came first before the gods. In Maimonides, the Rambam, Moshe ben Maimon, has to deal with that in Aristotelian philosophy on how that ties in and how he can square Aristotelian theology, cosmology with the Torah. If you want to read about that, read the Mar Nevuchim, Guide for Perplex, to get more information on that. And there are other interpretations, right? But we're going to follow the basic simple level meaning of the text. Now, another interesting phenomenon, that very opening sentence, is that the third word, Elohim, that is always translated as God, but except when it's being used as a reference to the idols or like the Greek gods or the Norse gods or the Hindu gods or whatever it may be. In which case Elohim is also used because Elohim is actually a plural form of the word. El, or Eloah, is individual, God. We sometimes use El that way, El Shaddai, God Almighty. Normally we refer to God as Elohim, which in form is a plural. Okay? But throughout Tanakh, it's always associated with a singular verb. It's always, if there's any adjective, the adjective is always singular. Hebrew nouns and verbs and adjectives have to agree in number, gender, I got it right? Number and gender, okay? So you don't use a feminine feminine word for a masculine noun with a masculine noun. You don't use a masculine noun with a feminine noun or a form of the verb. So you have, if it's a female subject, the verb must be a female verb. If it's a singular subject, we would expect a singular form of the verb. If it's a plural form of the noun, we would expect a plural form of the verb. So while Elohim is a plural form of the noun, it always understood when it's talking about God of Israel as a singular. Now, where it comes from, my feeling, my thoughts are, derived in part from some of the traditional commentaries, that the ancient world believed in the different powers of the universe and nature, and assumed that each one had a god that was in control of it. There's a storm god. There's a god for agriculture. There's a god for the earth. There's a god for the world of the dead. There's a god who commands the sea. Right? So that Norse mythology, as many of you may be aware of from all of the Marvel comic books movies, Thor is the god of thunder in Norse theology. And that's why he has a hammer to make the noise of the thunder. Zeus, which is the Greek form of Jupiter, the Latin form of the head of the gods, he has the bolt of lightning because he was the storm god. Baal, one of the Canaanite gods, was a storm god. He's called Baal, master. Various gods had control over the various forces of the world, of the universe. And so by saying God is Elohim, plural, we are saying all of those forces of the universe that other cultures, other pagan religions viewed as being different gods are united in one God. So Elohim suggests that all of the powers, and that's the word that is used at the very beginning, we'll talk about another name of God in a minute, creates heaven and earth and everything that's in it. Now, it's described as 7 days of creation, each element, different elements coming to being each one of those days, rising up in kind of a hierarchy. It's very clear. And at the top of the hierarchy is the creation of the first human beings, Adam and Eve. Right? And that too has a problem to it we'll deal with in a minute. Namely, it says on the sixth day, wrong page. One nice thing about these Hebrew commentary volumes is they take many pages to go through one chapter. All right, so it says, Vayivra Elohim et Adam, God created the man, B'tzalmo, in his image, whatever that really means, B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, bara oto, he created him. Zachar nekeva bara otam, male and female, he created them. So on the sixth day of creation, according to the biblical account, God creates humanity, both male and female. After everything else has been created. So you can either see humanity as being at the top of creation, the apex, or you can see man as the last thought. Everything else comes before humanity. And we should always have both ideas in mind, that we are at the top of creation and we're at the bottom of creation. And we have a responsibility because of that. And as the rabbi suggests, it says the sixth day, why Hashishi, the last word of the passage is Yom Hashishi. Before that is Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, Yom Revi. That doesn't say the sixth day. So the rabbi said that the world was dependent upon the sixth of the month of Iyar when Israel accepted the Torah. If they had not accepted the Torah, if they had not accepted the Torah, which is on the sixth day of the month, then the world would go back into tohu vavohu, void and unformed. Okay, so the world depends upon us fulfilling God's Torah. Okay, so now the second chapter, which begins with the account of the Sabbath, the sixth day of creation, it then describes the world in a different way of seeing it. Not as day one, day two, day three, but it says, this is the account of the heavens and the earth when God created them. And it uses the word Adonai Elohim. Yud He Vav He, the name of God, which you do not pronounce, is said to be the personal name of God. For rabbinic tradition, the two most important names that we associate with God, Elohim, which is more descriptive, as it were, and Yud He Vav He, which you in Art Scroll and in many Orthodox circles is always pronounced as Hashem, which means the name, is the personal name of God, as it were. Okay? That's, if you could, but we don't and can't, we want to say, hey, George, to God, that's what we would say to him, as it were. But also, the rabbis understood that they represent two different aspects of God. Elohim is God as the judge in judgment, strict judgment. Indeed, there's a part in the Torah later on in which the word Elohim refers directly to human judges, while the Yud He Vav He name of God refers to God as merciful. And so the rabbi said, when it came to creating the world, first he uses that word, the name of God, Elohim, because God meant to create the world based solely on justice. But after he created the world and he created human beings, he realized that if all he did judge the world on was on justice, the world wouldn't last. It needed mercy. In Christian terms, grace of God to survive. And so both names are used at this time. So then we're told that nothing has started to grow yet on the land because God had not caused it to rain and there's no body to till the land. And so God causes a mist to rise up from the earth, and then God forms the man from dust of the earth, and he breathes into his nostrils the breath of life. He makes a garden in Eden. By the way, it's not the Garden of Eden, it's actually the garden in Eden, for the man to till. And he brings, so then he brings all the animals to the man and he gives them names. And Ha'adam, or Adam as he's referred to it, He's a little lonely. He's got nobody to play with, nobody to deal with. And none of the animals seem to fit the bill. Okay. There's a comic strip that has, I love, I don't remember the name at the moment, but every once in a while it runs comics with Adam and the animals drinking beer in the Garden of Eden, watching football before Eve was created. That was what life was like before then. Okay. But in any case, so the man is lonely. And so God puts him into a deep sleep, takes from the side, from his flesh, and from that flesh he forms a woman. And that's why Adam calls her Isha, a woman, and that she was taken from the flesh of man. Therefore, a man leaves his father and his mother, and clings to his wife and becomes one flesh. Because in the union of husband and wife, it returns to the original format, which was male and female in one body. So that's how the rabbis explain the apparent discrepancy. Chapter 1 is a more general discussion of creation. Chapter 2 gives into details of what transpired, including the fact that man and woman originally was one, and then they were separated to form the two parts of the species. There's a famous midrash also that says, why was God, when God created humanity, he created only one creature? Well, with all the animals, he created multiplicities, multitudes of animals. He didn't create one deer, he created lots of deer, lots of fish, and dogs and cats and birds and lions and tigers, oh my, okay? To teach us that the value of life. One, that no one can say my father's better than your father, because ultimately we all go back to the same father in this vision of the world. And secondly, so that the value of life, that if you kill a person, you kill not only that person, but all of their future descendants who could have come from them. So those are two important ideas from the creation. Okay. Adam and Eve are told not to eat of the tree of Eitz Dat Tov V'Ra, the tree of knowledge, what that means. We don't have time to go into all of that. You know, I've already covered what would be perhaps a semester worth, at least, of good studies on the Bible. They eat of the forbidden fruit, which is not described. We're not told what it is, what the tree is, what the fruit is. The apple is a later suggestion of what that fruit was. Some suggest that because they dress up in fig leaves afterwards, that it was a fig tree. Another statement, it was wheat. All kinds of attempts to explain what it was. But they eat of that fruit, their eyes are open, they recognize that they are in a state of nakedness, which obviously means something more than the fact they didn't have clothes. Because obviously they knew they didn't have any clothing on. They knew they were dressed, as it were, just like everybody else, all the animals around. And not long after that, we're told of them having sexual relations and having children and beginning to populate the earth. Now, a very important theological statement is being made here in how we understand this story. Adam and Eve have sexual relations. It is not a sin. It's the normal thing. God says, let be fruitful and multiply. And at least until the modern era, the only way we could be fruitful and multiply was having sexual relations. So if that's what God wanted, how could there be anything wrong with it? And in Christian circles, it becomes connected with the idea of original sin. That Adam and Eve sinned, and that was connected with sexuality. And therefore, there's something basically wrong with sexuality. Why Paul says, basically the only reason for marriage is so you don't burn in hell or something like that, because you're going to do something wrong. So Judaism doesn't see anything inherently wrong in sexuality. it doesn't, and therefore we're told we're supposed to marry, supposed to have children. It's a mitzvah for a husband and wife to love each other both spiritually and physically. That's a good in Jewish tradition. Right? And so the idea of celibacy is frowned upon in rabbinic tradition. And a second element of it, which is also equally important, is that since there's nothing wrong with the sexual act, people are not born in a state of sin. Original sin for the rabbis, as they read the Torah, it was the first sin. They didn't obey God. So it's original in that sense. But it doesn't stick. It doesn't become part of the heritage of every human being that comes after that. For our tradition, everyone is born in a state of innocence. What they do with their lives, how they lead their lives, that determines whether they're good or evil, not birth. And therefore, there's no need, as in Christian theology, with the idea of the sacrifice on the cross of Jesus, to atone for humanity's sin, that original sin. Right? So we have our paths go different directions in interpreting this part of the Bible. So very beginning of the Tanakh, we part ways on how we interpret things. But since Genesis is trying to give us an idea of how the world came to be as we know it, it describes the various stages of different things coming into being. One of the earliest ones, unfortunately, being murder, where Cain kills Hevel. It tells us that eventually human life is corrupted and people corrupt their ways to such an extent that God is almost unhappy, regretting that he had created humanity, but one individual found favor in God's eyes, and that was Noah, and that's next week's Torah portion, the story of the flood. So we will talk about that, introduce that portion next week. But so basically we have the concept of the creation of the world by a creator. We have the concept that we have an obligation to him to do what is right, that he is the source of good and evil, of understanding of them. In the pagan world, you had many different gods. And they sometimes fought with each other. And how are you supposed to know what's right and wrong if the gods themselves don't follow that kind of behavior? And because when you read in the ancient mythologies, the gods are not necessarily such nice individuals. But when one God, there cannot be two sources. There cannot be a source of good and a source of evil. There can only be one source. There can be one authority. There's nothing at war one with the other. It's a unified understanding of the moral imperative of the world. It has its difficulties, and I don't want to shortchange it, but that is the understanding. Human beings often act on their emotions, and when we let them go wild, when we don't control them, as when Cain got upset because God liked Hevel's sacrifice and not Cain's sacrifice, he ends up killing Hevel. It doesn't say why exactly what happened, but that's what, the event, nonetheless, he kills him. He asks, when God says, where is my brother? Is Hevel? He says, Ashomer achi anochi, am I my brother's keeper? And obviously the answer to that is yes, you have a responsibility one to another. And so we make our way through this world on our behavior, on our actions, and we're responsible for those things. Okay.
Rabbi Berman,
yes.
sorry, was Judaism the first religion that accepted the God is only one God, not like the multiple gods, or was there anything else?
Well, it's not 100% clear because there, at least at one point in time in Egypt, there was an attempt to establish at least the primary role of one of the gods, Amun, Amun-Ra, but we have no other record of any true monotheistic faith that we know about before Judaism. Now, the critical scholars and historians, Zoroastrianism is not one God, it's two gods, God of good and a God of evil, and they're at war with each other, right? Okay, so indeed, we have to see that. And indeed, Judaism comes in contact with Zoroastrianism during the rabbinic period, the formation of the Talmud, and the rabbis are very much aware later on of that approach. An idea that of good and evil fighting each other. You find that to a certain extent in Christian circles, the idea of the role of Satan, the devil, that has various approaches. We will come across Satan later on. Our understanding of it is just he seems like God's chief prosecuting attorney. He's the crown attorney. That doesn't make him evil, but he does try to find what people have been doing wrong. And we'll see that, but he's not at war with God. Especially, we'll see that in the book of Job, how that plays out much later on. Okay. All right. Now, if I got this thing working, I say I don't promise to have it. And as I see, okay, let's see, let's call it up. See if it pops up. If it doesn't, then we're in real trouble again. Just a moment. That's not it. Okay, can you see the chart? I hope. Can you guys see this chart now? Yes, no? No. Okay. Let's try again. There we go. That's not the better version of it. Okay. Wanted to talk about Hebrew tonight, and we will start with this. First, a little bit of information about Hebrew. Hebrew is a Semitic language. It's related to Arabic. I don't know if any Arab speakers amongst our group. It is related to many other ancient languages that are no longer with us. And it is the language in which the Bible was written. Now, this chart, which I'm going to send you all a copy of it, this is a modern version of what Hebrew looks like. It's not in alphabetical order. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it or not, but that is Hebrew as we have it. Originally, we know that Hebrew was pictograms. The letters derived from pictures. And so the letter Aleph, for example, which becomes in Greek Alpha, as the name implies, the name was based upon it looking like an ox. Come back in a minute. Okay. If you think of an upside down letter A, capital letter A, okay, you've got two horns coming up, narrowing down to the face of the cow, of the ox. Aluf was an ancient word, ancient name of for ox. Bet was supposed to be a house. I never have understood that, to be honest with you. The letter Gimel, let's see, where's the Gimel here? The letter Gimel in its original form was just this part, something like this, the letter Nun over here. And that letter, Gimel, Gamal, looks a little bit like the head of a camel, which is Gamal. Okay. And so that's the original version of it. All right. So anyway, we had an alphabet that gave rise, was part of the Middle Eastern alphabetic systems. The Phoenicians used a form of it. The Phoenicians, the Greeks took it over from the Phoenicians and created the Greek alphabet, and hence ultimately the English alphabet. But the names of the Greek letters are very similar to the names in Hebrew and in Arabic, for that matter. And we can see the relationship to, in a certain sense, in the first few letters of the Greek alphabet. You have alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Hebrew, it's aleph, bet, gimel, and dalet. So they have the same first few letters that originate with the same names, or almost the same names, in the two languages. Somewhere before the end of the Babylonian exile, the Jewish community adopted a slightly different orthography, a different way of writing the alphabet. And the rabbis called that Katav Ashur, literally the Syrian alphabet. It replaced the old Hebrew alphabet to the one that we have today. We can see documents from the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example, that they're easily read when it's a good, clear document. But the forms of the letters are almost identical the way we form the letters now. And that became the Hebrew alphabet that we use. It was a consonantal alphabet. There are no vowels in Hebrew. At the passage of time, some words were changed a little bit in the spelling to make it easier to read by indicating a vowel sound using like the letter Vav, as we'll see in the word Baruch in a few minutes. But in the 8th, 9th, and 10th centuries, the system of dots and dashes above and below the word, or in the word, a letter, excuse me, were created to indicate how the consonant syllable would sound. Ba, ga, da, that sort of thing. Until we have today. In modern Israeli spelling, they add a lot of helping letters because sometimes it wouldn't be very clear what a word was unless you knew it. For example, the name for David in Hebrew, David, is Daled, Vav, Daled, which we today pronounce as David. But just with those three letters, If you didn't know better, you might think it was dod, which means uncle. So even in the Bible itself, at a certain period of time, the letter Yud was added so that it's spelled Daled Vav Yud Daled, spelling out David, making it easier to pronounce. And that's been happening with a lot of modern Israeli spelling. The other thing to remember is Hebrew is written from right to left. It's the same reason that English is written from left to right. Nobody knows. It just happened that way for whatever reason we can't really know. All we can know is that is what eventually became the circumstance. So what we're going to use, this book that we're going to use, uses a technique of teaching you how to recite a blessing, a bracha. And it's going to teach you the letters and vowels that are necessary to pronounce the words of the bracha. And it'll expand upon those later on with other words that are used in prayers, because that's a technique that is very useful. And for our purposes, since we're mostly concerned with Hebrew as you're going to find it in the synagogue, we're not interested in teaching you how to go on the street in Tel Aviv and ask for directions to a restaurant that's kosher and who has the best fish in town, unkosher restaurants. Not that you want to eat the shrimp or the lobster that are in some of the Tel Aviv restaurants. Okay. So anyway, so we've mentioned blessings before. Every blessing begins with the word Baruch. We say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Praise you, Lord God, King of the universe, or sovereign of the universe, who has commanded us, or etc., different kinds of things. So every Friday night, we make the Kiddush. We talked about that for Shabbat. We talked about it in terms of the holidays. And so, excuse me. So we're going to learn how to read the first part of the bracha, the blessing for the fruit of the vine, the blessing for wine. So the first letter we're going to learn is the opening letter of the word Baruch, as it sounds, B. So this letter right here, that's the letter Bet. Notice it has a dot in the middle. When you don't have the vowels, that might not be there. But since you're going to be using books for the most part that will have vowels in it, you will find that being the case. Okay? And at the beginning of a sentence, almost always it will have a dot in it. The only time it won't have a dot in it is when there's a vowel sound before it, but we'll get to that much later on. So the letter Bet, which is its name, is also pronounced like a B. It's very simple. And so without a vowel associated with this consonant, you have just a B, right? You can, you can go whatever you want to do, right? So by itself, we can't do much with it. In Hebrew, a syllable is always formed with a consonant and a vowel, either long vowel or short vowel. If it's a long vowel, that's a syllable, consonant vowel. If it's a short vowel, you need a consonant, vowel, consonant. Okay. So one of the exercises when I send you these copies is you should take a look through this prayer, Elohai Neshama, which is a prayer we're supposed to recite when we wake up in the morning, and find all the letter bets that are in it. Elohai Neshama Shenatata Bi. See, there's one. Whoops. There you go, one there. Tohora hi ata birata. There's another one. You'll take the paper, you'll have it, I'll send it to you, and you will be able to circle where they are. And you'll see here at the end of this prayer, this blessing, we have Baruch again. Okay. All right. I'll close that one. All righty, we want page 2. Okay. So we are still working on the word Baruch, the first word of a blessing. We now know the letter Bet, right? Everybody knows the letter Bet. Shake your head so I can hear the stones rattling. Yeah, okay. So as I said, you have to have a vowel with it. By itself, it's hard to pronounce. We'll come across something else later on that makes it easier. But right now, it's this B. So one sound that we make, like in the word Baruch for blessing, is Baruch. All right. Now, we're going to work on what is basically the Sephardic pronunciation. The Sephardic pronunciation is the way Hebrew is pronounced in the land of Israel on the street. It was the way Hebrew was mostly pronounced by the Jews who lived in the Arab world, North Africa, and the Muslim world and throughout that part of the world, versus the Ashkenazic pronunciation, which is what was the pronunciation of Jews in northern, Western Europe and Eastern Europe. So in the Ashkenazic pronunciation, they would say not as in Shabbat, but We're just going to ignore that. I'll make reference to it once in a while. If any Ashkenazi Hebrew speakers out there, you'll have to forgive me. Okay. So now, when you write under a letter, this sign is like a little T that tells you that the vowel that's associated with the consonant above it is All right. So when you come to read it, you will read consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, etc. So when you have the bet and you have the vowel you now have the word sound of ba. Okay, everybody. I know you can't hear me. I can't hear you. That's all right. Or you can hear me. But I want everybody to get their lips ready. You are going to read this. Okay? All together now. We're going to say ba, 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 ba. Okay? Anybody have any problems so far with learning the pronunciation of the first Hebrew word? Okay. So that's taken care of. So now, let's see. I need to share the screen again. I need to get that back up. That's not what I wanted. Okay, page 3. Okay. Where did you go? There you are. No, it's a little smaller, but all right. Okay, now we have the resh, the letter resh, which is the second letter in Baruch, right? So the letter resh is the R in Hebrew. It's basically how we would pronounce an R in English. Israelis have more of a rolling resh. French speakers know from that. But we are going to basically just use the plain R sound to it. So R, so you have the ba, and it's going to be followed by an R sound. But when it's by itself, you see it has a vowel under it. Okay, so Rishon, as in Rosh Hashanah. So the first sound we've got is Ra. So I want everybody to say Ra with me. All right, let's say Ra. I didn't hear you. Come on, Ra. Ra, yeah, roar. Okay. So now we're going to have Ba. Right? Everybody says Ba. Then now it's Ra, Ba, Ra. Okay. So we have Ra, Ba, Ra, Ba, and Ra. All right, let's go to the second line. Make this a little bigger for you. Trying to figure out how to do bigger and be able to see you guys, and it doesn't work so well. But anyway, it's.
Are we supposed to see your screen right now?
You're not seeing it?
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you for asking. Share screen. Is it up now?
No.
No. Okay, let's see here. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. You got it up now?
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize for that. Thanks for asking. So I guess I have to go through everything again, huh? All right, so this is the letter Resh, the R. We're going to pronounce it just as R in English. And with the kamats under it, we have Ra. Okay, so let's read through the first line. We have Ra, Ba, Ra, Ba, Ra. So those are individual syllable sounds. Line number 2, we're going to start to combine some. We have Ra, Ba, Ra, Ba, Bara, Bar. See, there's no vowel in the resh, so it's going to be one syllable. Bar. Anybody know what bar means in Hebrew? Actually, it's Aramaic. Son. Bar mitzvah. It's in bar mitzvah. It means son or member of a group. Okay, so we have Ra, Ba, Rabba, Bara, Bar, Ra, and Ba again. Okay. Line number 3. We have Rab, Bar, Bara, Rabba, Rar, Rabar, Barar. And line number 4, we have Baba, Ra, Babara, Ra, Ba, Bar, Ra, Ba, Bar. It's all nonsense syllables, so don't worry about, all right? Everybody get that okay? I will send you the copies of this. Let me see if I got one more in there or not. Did I get the 4th page? I had some issues. No, I only got the 3 pages in. All right. All right, so that'll be tonight's Hebrew for us for tonight. Now, one of the things that I told you was I was supposed to give you a test tonight. So let me call up one of my tests. On here. Did practice. Okay. All right, you can see, can you see this now? All right, don't, okay. So here's an example of one of my difficult tests. So everybody will take a look and go through this. Okay, question number 1. Everybody see the questions? So number 1, Jews are A, an ethnic group, B, a religious group, C, both, D, neither. So what's the correct answer?
C.
Correct. Torah, number 2. Torah means, I don't know if we went through this yet. A, teaching, B, law, C, doctrine, D, all of these, E, none of these. Anybody want to try?
Rabbi, if you don't mind me telling you, I mean, I see the letters being bolded. Some of the, like for example,
Oh,
B
that's
is
right. I
bolded.
did do that. Yeah.
So I think it defeats the purpose. Can you?
Yeah, that was one of for my answering sheet. Okay, let's see.
Yeah. So
Hey, listen a minute. Wait a minute.
if we could try this again without the bolded.
Oh, I'll take care of that just a second. I think.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
Home. Can I do this?
Yeah.
All.
Mm-hmm. And let's begin at the bottom and let's go backwards
And you want to go backwards?
Yeah, let's go backwards. We can so we don't remember what we saw.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay.
My point is here is not for you to know or not. This is for you to have an understanding what kind of tests I'm going to, kind of things I want you to really know. All right. So number 3, Jewish calendar is A, lunar, B, solar, C, solar, lunar. That you better know. What's the answer?
C.
C. Okay. How many days is Rosh Chodesh? 1,
2.
3, 1 or 2, 2 or 3. Answer is D.
2.
1 or 2. Remember, if a month is 30 days long, the 30th day of the month is Rosh Chodesh, and the first day of the new month is also Rosh Chodesh. So now that in mind, you should be able to know the answer to the next one. So how many days are there in a Jewish month? A, 29, B, 30, C, 31, D, A and B, E, B and C. A and B. I saw that mouth going there. Okay. The Jewish day begins at A, midnight, B, sunrise, C, noon, D, sunset. Sunset. Okay, that's when we have to light candles before sunset. And candles should be lit no later than 5:30 p.m., 1 hour before sunset, 18 minutes before sunset, sunset. All right, the 18 minutes. The second night of Yom Tov falls on a Friday. We light the candles A, 18 minutes before sunset, 10 minutes before after sunset, 42 minutes after sunset.
It's 42, right?
It's a trick question. When Yontiv falls, the second day of Yontiv, we always light the candles 42 minutes after sunset. But when Yom Tov and Shabbat come together, we can't light the candles after sunset on Shabbat. So we have to light them at the normal 18-minute lighting time, 18 minutes before sunset.
So, Rabbi,
Yes.
Shabbat trumps everything.
Shabbat trumps just about everything, yes. The only thing it doesn't really trump is we're not supposed to fast on Shabbat but on Yom Kippur, we do fast on if it falls on Shabbat. But otherwise, you're right. Pretty much Shabbat trumps everything. It's a good way of putting it. As long as you're not referring to the Trump that begins with Donald. I already said it. I'm an American citizen. I already voted several weeks ago. I bet you can guess who I didn't vote for. Okay. But I'm not supposed to take sides. Okay. Match the following home Shabbat observances. Shalom Aleichem. Well, I got the answers there for you.
See.
Yeah, they're out there anyway.
Well, I won't look. I'm not looking.
You won't look.
No.
Okay. All right, so let's see. I will have sometimes like this, right? So, tab. Okay, so you've got Shalom Aleichem, Eshet Chayil, and Kiddush. They only gave you 3. It'd probably be more than 3 to match up.
Mhm.
So Shalom Aleichem is C, hymn sung to welcome the angel at the beginning of Shabbat.
Mhm.
Eshet Chayil is the 31st chapter of Proverbs, praises the Jewish woman. And that means 12 Kiddush is blessing, welcome in Shabbat, recited over wine. All right. 13. Under which, I should be which circumstances, or under what circumstance may we suspend Shabbat rules? A, someone has an important job. B, there's an important event in someone's life. C, to save a life. What's the correct answer there, ladies and gentlemen?
Always C.
Always C. All right. How many blank numbers of loaves of bread are on the Shabbat table on Friday night? A2, B3, C4, D5,
2.
2. On Rosh Hashanah, we dip bread in A, vinegar, B, salt, C, honey.
Honey.
Honey, okay, you're going on a good swing there. Which of the following is not forbidden on Yom Kippur? Always listen to the question. A, sexual relations, B, eating and drinking, C, singing, D, bathing, E, wearing leather shoes. Which are not forbidden?
Singing?
Singing. Except in the pandemic, you're not supposed to sing right now. So some of the shuls do have it forbidden. We're on Yom Kippur. Strange things. If Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat, we A, blow, or B, do not blow the shofar.
We don't blow on Shabbat.
Correct. If Yom Kippur falls on Shabbat, we A, fast, B, we do not fast.
We do fast.
Yeah. And what is the name of that light above the ark? Anybody remember?
No.
All right. Let's see, what was that? Okay. You should be able to do it either way. Know that the Ner Tamid is the eternal light, and the eternal light is the Ner Tamid. Okay. And finally, number 20, we are allowed to cook on Yom Tov. True or false? We are allowed.
I'm gonna
What?
say true. I'm gonna say true.
You are correct for saying true. All right. Unless Yom Tov falls on Shabbat. Okay. That's the kind of test that we're going to have, when the time comes.
Mhm.
I don't think they're not overly difficult. They're mostly, I don't like just simply asking you to fill in an answer with a blank altogether because people scratch and I don't know what their scratches necessarily mean and I don't want to be judging them. What we will do, obviously, because still we're in this pandemic set of circumstances, we will probably have the exam online. I will send it to you in advance. You can go over it as long as you do it before the night of the class. Both members, if there's a partnership there, both of you are supposed to take the test separately. No cooperation with one another. And whoever does better gets awarded over the other. I don't know what the deal is. They have to do the dishes for the week or whatever the case may be. I don't know. I got out of doing dishes tonight because I had the class.
I have a question,
Sure.
Rabbi. So for the test, what's the best way to prepare for this? Is it by, again, reading, doing the readings, and also from the
Yeah,
the
well,
lessons?
I would think that if you've come to the classes
Mhm.
and you take some notes, I try, I think you can kind of see the most important things that are getting emphasized. All right. And, so, yeah, the readings can help. I don't know that I ever ask a question on something that's not in the class itself. It's possible. But usually, if everything should be covered in the class.
Thank you.
All right. I mean, it certainly helps you to do the readings, a good review. And there's lots of good things out there, as I've told you. But you just have to be careful when you go to different websites to see what they're really about. All right. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen and ladies? Okay. All right, God willing, we'll start on time again. Next week, we'll continue with the Hebrew. Those of you who'd like to take the course, please send that in. And they're going to be doing it on Zoom on Sunday mornings. All the information is there online. You have to go online, you'll get it for Beth Emeth. They will be doing a little bit differently, so there'll be different overlap. They won't, I looked at it. If you want, you can go, this being sponsored by, it's the National Jewish Outreach Program, or NJOP. You can go to their website. You can see what the books look like, at least the opening book. And I'm not, right? So it's kind of cute. You can flip the pages while you're reading through it. But it's a different, somewhat different style, but the Hebrew's the same. Hebrew is Hebrew is Hebrew. We're going to be concentrating on synagogue Hebrew. The words that we eventually will get to that are words are going to be mostly words you'll find in the synagogue services, in the Bible reading, that sort of thing. Okay. Okay, everybody.
Okay.
See
Good night.
everyone next week.
Good night, Rabbi.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Hey, guys.